and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. I really want to get into a lot of different things that are happening right now that all seem to be playing a purpose in a bigger picture, and I think it's being done in a way that it suggests that it's being done for the bigger picture. Many people might just claim, oh, it's all coincidence and it's not really going to happen. But I think in the state that we are as a nation, as a culture, as a diverse group of cultures, and how the political system has been able to manipulate everyone into the system that has robbed many people of any wealth or ability to gain wealth, and even sometimes to point to sustain themselves. We have to question things, and it's really even in the best of times we should always question things. And you know, I kind of want to get into Jade Helm and some other things, but I'm going to start off with something to do with the Patriot Act. And they are claiming that they are going to reform the Patriot Act. They're going to make a compromise between the people that want to keep the Patriot Act and the people that think it's a abridgment to our freedoms and think that it should have even been passed in the first place. And some of those people are even people that originally supported it. But I wanted to play this clip with Ron Paul and Norman Singleton. And it talks about this new reform, and they're calling it the Freedom Act instead of the Patriot Act, which when the Patriot Act was passed, we realized that there's nothing patriotic about it. So we should just, by government's example, what they've done in the past, come to the conclusion that the Freedom Act will have nothing to do with freedom. And that's also a conclusion that Ron Paul's come to. But I'm going to play this, and this is from ronpaul.com. With key provisions of the Patriot Act expiring at the end of this month, Congress is scrambling to keep these provisions on the books while making it seem like they are reforming the original act to better protect our civil liberties. The USA Freedom Act is being advertised as a compromise between those who want to keep the Patriot Act intact and those who want to repeal it. It is not a compromise. It is a fig leaf. The Ron Paul Liberty Report is joined by Dr. Paul's former legislative director, Norman Singleton, to get to the bottom of the smoke and mirrors called reform. So let's go ahead and get to this, and we'll get into it. I'm going to also open up phone lines. Hopefully I have them forwarded. But I'll open it up sometime in the second hour. So we'll just go ahead and get started with this clip and discuss it here afterwards.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Liberty Report. I'm delighted today to have two special guests. Of course, Daniel McAdams has been with me a good bit, with this report. He's with me again today, and he, of course, is the executive director of the Institute for Peace and Prosperity. But today, Daniel, we also have another special guest that we've known for a long time. Matter of fact, I've known this guest longer than I've known you because he came, and if anybody's annoyed by me having been in Congress, they should be annoyed with him because he actually came to Texas to help me beat the establishment when they didn't want me to go back to Congress in 1996. That is Norm Singleton. Norm, great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Great to be here.
Okay, Norm was the legislative director when you came to our office in the historic year 2001, and you worked very closely with him. You understand his humor, and you understand his ability, and you know his filing system very well. So, but Norm, it is good. I have relied on you for so long, for so much information, and I still do. Because you're doing very similar work to keep everybody at Campaign for Liberty alert to everything that's going on the Hill and trying desperately to stop some of these bad pieces of legislation. And, of course, you did a lot of work on the Banking Committee as well and on Audit the Fed. But today what we want to talk about is a bill that the Campaign for Liberty is working on. There was a major vote yesterday in the House Judiciary Committee, and that's the USA Freedom Act. And this is the bill that is going to give us all this wonderful stuff. It's going to reform the Patriot Act. And the American people are tired of the Patriot Act and all the spying. And Edward Snowden has done a great job telling the people how bad that is. But yesterday, there was a vote in Judiciary Committee. And so, Norm, very briefly start off by telling us a little bit about what the bill is, the U.S. Freedom Act is all about, and just why. That sounds like a great bill. Sounds like if you and Daniel got together, you'd say, hey, Ron, this is a Freedom Act. And the Patriot Act was so great, so the Freedom Act must be pretty good, too, especially since it's supposed to, make things a little bit better for the American people. But let us know what the update is and what this vote was yesterday.
Well, of course, to start with, any time a bill has a name like the USA Freedom Act, you need to read it very carefully because the title tips you off. It's going to be bad. If it's called the Patriot Act, not really Patriot Act. If it's called the Affordable Health Care Act, your health care is not going to be more affordable. And if it's called the USA Freedom Act, we're not going to have more freedom in the USA after it passes. And what this bill is, it's basically two parts. One is, which is, of course, the main concern of the administration, the security state, and their defenders and apologists in Congress, is an extension of the parts of the Patriot Act that sunset at the end of this month, June 1st, that are some of the worst in terms of authorizing the security agencies to collect our phone calls, our what's called megadata, and do on every American, really the heart of what the Snowden revelations were all about. Then, because of the Snowden revelation and because of the groundwork that has been laid by the work that you, Dr. Paul, Daniel, myself, and our allies, both in Congress and more importantly throughout the nation, have done on this issue since 2001, there's such a great public demand now for an end, or at least a modification of these programs, some kind of restraint. There is a little tiny bit of reform put in to make it a little bit more difficult for them to collect the data. But if you look at the details, it really is such small reform that it practically amounts to nothing. This is not going to stop a creative. And as we saw, one of the things we saw with Snowden revelations is they're very creative in looking at the law and figuring out how to get around it, how to find a loophole, how to exploit those loopholes. So this bill will not do anything. What it does do is it makes the House leadership able to issue press releases saying, we reformed the Patriot Act, but we're keeping you safe from terrorism while protecting your rights. But they've been saying that Patriot Act in 2001, and then a few years after that, we get a revelation that the NSA is exceeding its limitations. They're collecting all sorts of data, and then some congressmen thump their chests about how they're for reform, but we can't get rid of everything, and we're back to square one again.
Yeah, if in a way they're pretending to do some good, but aren't they really doing the same thing with a very, very thin line of trying to protect us? The phone companies still have to keep all the records, and the government has access to these records. So, and are we going? Are they? And I think they are allowed to see if this is correct, that they can get these records, and if at least for 72 hours, and a chance to get a search warrant for them.
Right. So they said that President Obama, shortly after Snowden revealed the extent of the spying and the record collection, said he doesn't want the government to collect these records. He wants the phone company to store the records for the government. I don't really see the difference, especially since if you look at the history of it, there aren't many. And I'm forgetting his name. Sorry about that. But there aren't many heroes in the telecommunications and internet world who are willing to stand up for their customers.
Right. I think Daniel has a question or a point.
Yeah, it's more of an observation, I guess. It's interesting how the propaganda plays out in this, Norm, because on one hand you have the status quo, and then you have the extreme on the other side, which is we want to maintain the Patriot Act just like it's always been. And so the media sells the Freedom Act as a wonderful compromise, moving us in the right direction, when, as you pointed out, if there is any reform, it's very, very small. And in fact, I think you might argue, Dr. Paul, but putting this in the hands of the telephone companies to do the government's dirty work for them may even be worse than before.
Oh, I think that's a very good point, because that, again, puts big business and big government together. Big business becomes an arm of the government. We see too much of that already, and it's a shame that big business so often goes along with this. So, yes, I would be fearful of it. So far, Norm, what you're telling me and what I know about this, I think I lean toward no on this bill. But what is next up now? They passed it out of committee. Understand it will come up soon in the next couple weeks, maybe on the House floor.
Well, they're out next week, so it probably will be either the week after next or the third week of May. And of course, this is another trick they like to pull, is because the authority for a lot of the spying expires on May 31st. They like to bump up against the deadlines. We see this with all the budget stuff, where they wait till the end of the fiscal year before they bring their appropriations bills, bring their omnibus on December 23rd to threaten people with, you're going to have to be here over Christmas if you don't vote for it. Yeah. And with another deadline, I wouldn't be surprised if they're here on late May 30th passing this bill, and that makes it easy for the House leadership to scare people into voting their way.
Yeah, and they claim this is a very, very important deadline. But the worst thing that could happen if they didn't do it by June 1st is we would have more liberty on July 2nd. And this sounds like we're going to have no security. Well, for some reason, what happened after 9/11, the American people didn't commit the crimes, and yet they got all the penalties and lost all their liberties, and the process of our dangers still exists. Of course, both the Senate has to pass something, and the president has to sign something. I think the president leans towards saying he supports the USA Freedom Act the way it stands. But what's going on in the Senate? This Senate leader over there, Republican leader, whose side is he on? Is he on the side of the American people, or he's talking about introducing another bill? Or I think he already has.
He has a bill that he filed and put on the Senate calendar. They haven't scheduled a vote on it yet, but it's basically just a straight reauthorization of the Patriot Act provisions that sunset. And from everything that I've read, seen, and told by other people in the Senate, is that this is either a ceiling for Patriot Act reform, which means, a floor for reform, which means that it has to keep the existing structures in place and just tinker around the edges. That's the USA Freedom Act. Don't repeal anything that's currently in there. It's also been referred to as a conversation starter, which basically means he's staking out his position at the farthest extreme in order to try to clearly water down what comes out of the House even more when the House and Senate go to conference, or when there's another bill out there in the Senate. And the idea is, again, it's a scare tactic to try to get some people who might be inclined to push for more than what the USA Freedom Act is given, might be inclined to walk away from the table if they don't get real reforms, to say, oh my God, we need to pass the USA Freedom Act, and we need to pass it right now because Mitch McConnell is going to ram through a straight extension of the Patriot Act. That's another problem with the USA Freedom Act, though, is it does extend these provisions, I believe, for 4 years. So it takes this, Dr. Paul and Daniel, how Congress works. If there's not a reason to change the law, the law is not going to get changed. So unless we have another Snowden in the next 4 or 5 years, the odds that Congress will voluntarily take up something better than USA Freedom is pretty slim.
Yeah. Norm, as disheartening as it is to see this propagandizing that we've got to do this Freedom Act, looking for the silver lining, I think it's encouraging that the only reason we're even talking about even minor reform is because of citizen pressure. And Snowden certainly helped, but citizens' awareness, what you all do over there and what we all do to try to get people motivated. So I think really, I'm sure both of you will agree with me that the biggest message now is for people, don't compromise. You've got them on the ropes maybe, and it's not time to take any half measures. Keep pushing for real liberty and real freedom.
I think that's a very important point. I think we're going to sort of close with this point because Norm works the Campaign for Liberty, and they're involved with legislation. And that we ourselves get very frustrated with the political system. I've been in it, and I'm still very frustrated with it. Some of our people think it's not worth it. But the work the Campaign for Liberty did and what you guys did when we were in office, we had an effect on the Federal Reserve. No, we didn't get rid of the Fed, and we didn't get the Fed audited, partially so. But a lot more people know about it. That is why this work is important to continue with it. And people who say, nah, it's not worth the effort, well, go into education or something. But I think this political action is important, and that's why I wanted to make sure everybody knew that Campaign for Liberty was busy on this subject. And it does make a difference. Prevailing attitudes is really the ultimate test of how a country goes. If the country supports welfare and warfare, the government is going to do it. And it's when the people reject Keynesian economics, reject this interventionism in foreign policy, and honors and respects the Fourth Amendment and our Bill of Rights, that's when the government will change. So I think this is all very important. So, Norm, do you have a quick suggestion for our listeners on what they might do if they are inclined to try to spread this message?
I would say call your representative and senator, tell them to oppose the USA Freedom Act, tell them to oppose Mitch McConnell's bill. There is a bill, I think it's 1466, the Surveillance State Repeal Act, sponsored by the lead Republican is Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky, that repeals the Patriot Act and the FISA Amendments Act and puts in place real protections of our security. That's the bill that they need to be concerned about. They need to have moving. And also, educate your friends. I mean, for political activists out there, they need to be doing education too, because politicians, people like to say, well, if one person calls, they'll ignore me. That's probably true, but if 50 people call or 100 people call, they will pay attention. And the way you get 100 people to call is you explain this to your friends and neighbors. You write letters to the editors. You go to town. You go to meetings. You pass out literature, and you make them understand that this is going to affect you. And what the guy you sent to Washington to do, if he doesn't know that you're watching him or her, and but that lobbyist is, or Mitch McConnell and John Boehner are. Guess who they're going to listen to?
Yeah, right. Anyway, Norm, thank you very much for being with us today. It's good to see you, and urge all our listeners to go to the Campaign for Liberty website. Now, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back and visit us soon. Thank you.
Okay, that was the Liberty Report. Got that from ronpaul.com. And it was titled Ron Paul, Why the Freedom Act Won't Protect Our Liberties. The video on YouTube's titled Patriot Act Reform, a Hoax. And I think it will get passed through the way that they were describing, that they would try to pass it through. Look, these people are trying to cram through the Patriot Act. Let's put this Freedom Act up. It's a second option that's not as bad, when it's the same thing. They already have their plan made up for that. So, and there's actual real bill to, call that back. But, they're going to brush that one under the rug and not tell people about it. You won't hear it in the mainstream media. You'll hear the Freedom Act to replace the Patriot Act. That's the one that they'll end up pushing, and it'll end up going through, and we'll just have an extension of the Patriot Act. And I think they are planning on something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's completely true. I don't have the 100% evidence, but when I start seeing everything going on, we had Ferguson, almost everything that came out of Occupy. And I'm not saying that Occupy was the beginning, but I'm saying that a lot of a lot of key players that were they were attempting to be the ringleaders of the Occupy movement. They attempted to try to control the message and make sure that their message was the only one coming out of Occupy, which I think they did a horrible job. But then after Occupy and during Occupy, you've seen all the police clashes. And then after Occupy, we seem to have this string of clashes and riots and burning. And I think it's all something to divide and conquer. I think that they're using people as puppets. I think that, yes, the emotions and the frustration is real, but the knowledge behind what are they doing and who's helping this along to become something violent. I think both on the police side and the protesters or riot or whatever you want to call them side, I think there were influences on both sides to help intensify situation to then justify bringing troops in. And what we are constantly seeing is either the state cops stepping in and then even National Guard. And even the local police look like they're military. They got their whole riot gear looking like robo-cops out there. And it's, in a way, conditioning parts of the population. It's putting these people, the protesters, in situations where even the ones that were out there for a legitimate reason, trying to be peaceful, and are caught up in this, are being criminalized. Then it's also using people that do have these emotions, build up this frustration, and using maybe their ignorance of where they should be pointing a lot of their frustration. By using the cops too, it helps perpetrate this violence. And this is exactly what they want. I really believe that this is exactly what they're aiming for. I have one here from offgridsurvival.com. Will social unrest lead to a national police force? Baltimore mayor tied to Obama's plan to nationalize police. And this has been a big topic lately. And we see the left coming out going, we need to nationalize it. And what we don't realize is a lot of the city, in a way, is nationalized. You don't get to vote for the police chief. The police chief takes federal funding, military gear, and with that federal funding comes these strings tied to it that they basically train with the federal government. And this is what it's led up to, is this paramilitary force marching around the streets. And when you try to redress the government for the grievances, you become a criminal. And I'm going to read this here. It says, Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake, the same mayor who admitted in a press conference that she gave rioters room to destroy the city, is one of the President Obama's appointed mayors on his task force on 21st century policing. Oh, and she was also the one that didn't put the body cameras on the law enforcement in Baltimore. A task force put together after the Ferguson riots to look at nationalizing police policies. Oh. Quote, the federal government can be a strong partner in our efforts to build better relationships between the police and communities, she said in written testimony before the task force. It's a topic I've covered numerous times over the years, from small local forces being given military battlefield equipment to the Department of Homeland Security using terrorism grants to take over local police forces. This county's police departments are being targeted for takeover. As I've pointed out in the past, I believe these protests are all part of a carefully scripted plan meant to further nationalize our police force. We've seen the same groups popping up in every one of these situations, which I pointed out too on this broadcast. And after every riot, the federal government has taken further steps to nationalize the police, including using Ferguson chaos to create a national police task force. Media blaming everyone except for actual criminals. The news of the mayor's involvement broke as CNN started bizarrely start blaming the Baltimore riots on returning veterans. which can be seen in a video below. Give me a second. In fact, it says here, while CNN and many other national media organizations are trying to shift the blame, a social media firm found 20 and 50 social media accounts being used to promote the riots in Baltimore were also tied to the peak period of violence in Ferguson. One account, which also tracked the recent union protests in New York City as well as other disturbances, tweeted photos of Gray's funeral and used language that seemed to anticipate violence in Baltimore. In fact, Obama's superfan and millionaire street agitator Russell Simmons has been calling for people to rise up. This is the same guy who called for more police killings on his Twitter account right after the death of 2 New York officers late last year. Report warns gang attacks on white cops could spread nationally. Law enforcement intelligence officials are warning that street gangs are uniting to kill all white police officers. An unlikely union between gang members, religious leaders, and elders is forming in Baltimore as officials are raising concerns that violence could spread nationally. And that's from Off-Grid Survival. And, you know, there's a lot of misguided people, I think, out there. And what's happening is they're being used. And what'll come out of this is it doesn't matter if you march on your local law enforcement when the rules are coming from D.C. or some secret court, or, you know, they could just call you terrorists, lock you up, and not give you a trial. So we have to have people that are going to critically think. And that's what I hope to do, is get people to critically think about these things before they act, because our emotions are always going to be used to their advantage if we don't think about what we're doing. So if we raise up and just commit violence, it's different than defending yourself or defending your neighbors. So going out to the streets and throwing rocks at the police is engaging in violence. If the streets come marching, or the cops come marching down your street and are trying to take away people, and you defend your community and your neighbors, that would be a different thing. And that's another thing with law enforcement. Are you engaging in no-knock raids on people that, oh, they had some pot, or, oh, you know, they're not harming other people, but they could. You know, these victimless crimes, these pre-crime raids. And, you know, law enforcement also has to critically think, which I know a lot of them are. There are a lot more law enforcement, I think, critically thinking, definitely after this. You know, we keep doing this stuff for the state, and then we watch these Baltimore cops that are doing what a lot of law enforcement does, and they'll be thrown under the bus. So why would we be thrown under the bus for doing what we're asked to do? And if cops start critically thinking, they're going to go, hold on, you know, these people only have our back until people are mad, and then they'll just throw us under the bus, even though they're the ones ordering this stuff. Then when you see people like the mayor tied to, you know, this federalized policing task force, that their sole purpose is to federalize and nationalize the police, you know, red flags should go up, and law enforcement shouldn't go along with this. I'm going to play a short clip. This one's about Jade Helm 15, psychological warfare. And I think this all plays another thing into the civil unrest, that they're training for it. They're expecting it. I believe that they're helping prop it up. And I think they're trying to train for it. And I hope there's enough military people out there that are aware of this and won't go along with it. But I'm afraid that there could be enough that they'll go along with it. I just don't know the answers, but we know this Jade Helm's going on. We also know a lot of what information we have on Jade Helm has been leaked by military. But let me go ahead and play this clip. This is from AMTV, Christopher Green. And again, it's Jade Helm 15, psychological warfare. Maybe.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. It is Thursday. I believe it is the 30th. And no sexy video effects today, guys. Just myself. So I'll bring the sexy to the game this morning. Waiting on a cup of coffee. A little irritable. You know, I really need my cup of caffeine when I get up in the morning, probably like some of you that tune in. So what is Jade Helm 15? For those of you that don't know, it is a vast military operation, exercise that is taking place in various states in the Southwest United States. And this has all been admitted by the federal government. This is legitimate. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a vast operation. Military exercises will be taking place in states like California, our home state here, Arizona, Utah, which they list as a hostile, potentially hostile.
Excuse me.
Hostile state. Texas is a hostile state. The very southern tip of California, as you approach TJ, is a hostile state, and it has many people worried. And the internet has been lit up with all kinds of suggestions, conspiracy theories. Are they declaring martial law? Is this some kind of drill? The governor of Texas it even has his eye on this. I mean, the Texans I love. I love Texas. What a fantastic state, because they're all over this and they're taking it very seriously. You know, if you go through some of the comment sections here related to the governor of Texas keeping his eye on these military operations, you'll read a lot of comments that basically just say anyone that lives in Texas is crazy. And it just goes to show you how naive most of Americans in America actually is. They don't understand that the same type of psychological warfare was used in Nazi Germany by putting troops in the streets. So it familiarized the people and the masses with troops and the military being present. And then they just started taking you out of your homes and killing you. Well, we have a similar type of exercise taking place in the Southwest United States. Now, what's interesting about this is they're supposedly not using public land. It's leasehold. So they've leased private land the federal government has to run these exercises over a series of days. So what do I think? Do I think that they're going to declare, martial law tomorrow? Are they going to declare, martial law? Are all the conspiracy, theories correct in that fact? Well, the quick answer to that is anything is possible. I don't think that that's coming today or tomorrow. But what I do think Jade Helm 15 is an act of psychological warfare. I believe it to be a psyop, a psychological operation, which again conditions the masses to get used to this Orwellian presence, to get used to, military and these military exercises in the public sphere, where you're just walking around your town or your city here, maybe in Phoenix, and you see tanks, you see, these military exercises taking place. And I also think that they're gathering intelligence. I think that this is an intelligence operation. So when they do declare martial law at some point in the future, they have all of this mapped out. Now, this is something that the government is not just doing, has admitted to, is taking place, is confirmed. Again, there's historical precedent with this. And it's something that we should be very, very fearful of, as is the great state of Texas, as am I, as is any American that knows their history, knows the founding of this great nation, knows never, ever, ever trust your government. It's exactly why the system was set up as a representative republic and not just some kind of kingship or dictatorship here in the United States of America. Now, what honestly worries me more now than Jade Helm 15 is what's happening with the potential nuke bomb on Wall Street. The series of bubbles that have been created by the Federal Reserve and this new bubble that is currently taking place and is happening live and in real time right now. In fact, they might be running some of these exercises, Jade Helm 15, in preparation for the coming economic collapse, which really we're living through today. But I believe there will be a far greater fallout in the not too distant future as a result of these policies, as a direct result of the Federal Reserve. And again, these financial shenanigans I've reported on ad nauseum for several years now. So again, Jade Helm 15, in my opinion, is an act of psychological warfare. Again, it is conditioning the masses to these types of operations. Now, keep in mind, martial law has already been declared. For those of you that think it's just a conspiracy theory, we had martial law not too long ago in Boston with the Boston bombing. They shut down an entire American city, basically locked it down, just suspended the Constitution overnight because of two dudes that the CIA, by the way, have been tracking for some time and even helping to get over to Chechnya. And then suddenly just, went to Martha Stewart's website, got some nails at Home Depot and killed a bunch of people, if you believe the official narrative. They shut down the city streets of Ferguson, Missouri. That was another act of martial law, suspending the Constitution with a curfew. There has been martial law, arguably, with another curfew in Baltimore, which we've been seeing this week, which I've recently reported on. Notice that the narrative has even changed with that story, with a report now that Freddie Gray had been banging himself against the walls of the vehicle as they were transporting him to jail. So that narrative is actually completely changing too. Isn't it interesting that we have all these riots? We have these testing grounds for martial law, and the narrative changes from what the original story was that the mainstream media was pitching. Same thing happened with Trayvon Martin. Same thing happened with Michael Brown. We're seeing the same thing in Baltimore. So again, folks, this, in my opinion, is psychological warfare at its finest. And do not underestimate it. We should all be very, very concerned. We should be very worried. And this really is just a training ground for U.S. intelligence to basically gather that intelligence, the intelligence that is needed to kind of estimate what a potential resistance would look like in this country. And, instead of picking on states like Texas, we should embrace states, very patriotic states like Texas, the Southwest United States, because these are the states that will and would stand up to this tyranny, that would stand up to the tyranny of the federal government in a worst case scenario. And I humbly believe we're living through that worst case scenario now. I see it with my frame of reference coming from an economics background and a finance background and having studied this stuff for over a decade and practiced it for over a decade. That's where I see it. But what you'll note and notice is very interesting about all this is that all of us are coming to the same conclusion. Whether or not you come from a finance background, you come from a political background, you come from a religious, spiritual background, all of this points to the same conclusion. And it's not a good one. The smartest people out there are very pessimistic about what's happening to this country at this very given moment of time. And it's very, very dangerous, folks. Also, I wanted to speak to the fact there's been some estimation. This again falls a little bade into the conspiracy side of Jade Helm 15 with the closures of several Walmarts in the area, in these states, that maybe potentially Walmart is being used as some kind of,
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. But no matter what they're calling the purpose, no matter what you might believe the purpose is they are actively training in situations to stop civil unrest. Now, will they use it on us? I think that really depends on the folks in the military. Are they brainwashed enough, or do they have that ability to critically think and go, when these orders go against what is right, will I follow? And there's going to be oath keepers and other people that really take, protecting Americans seriously and, protecting their freedoms, most of all. What I fear is situations like what happened during Katrina, which does show that at times people think they're doing the right thing, but they don't critically think enough to realize what they're actually doing. When they, the one of the most famous ones during Katrina is the old lady that was in her house. She was in a part that wasn't flooded out, but for her safety, they basically kind of manhandled her, took her gun, and she didn't want to leave her home because she knew what the possibility by leaving would be is, well, if it's a vacant home and you got looters, they're going to come. By clearing out neighborhoods, they left them wide open. And we've seen, the consequences of that. But we also seen the consequences of military, which the National Guard basically is military. Even if you look at our founding documents, what National Guard used to be considered was the militia. Then somehow it became the National Guard without amending the state constitutions, and basically kind of fell under Pentagon rule. So even if you look at it as a militia, militias aren't supposed to be a standing army, for one. And when it's ran by the military industrial complex, then it is part of the military. And that means military was on our streets confiscating us. They didn't only do it then. There were people that were getting out of that, fleeing their homes, and they were taking their, possessions with them, some of their more valuable possessions. And, of course, you don't want to leave firearms behind either. They were confiscating those. So we know that it's possible, but at what type of scale, I think this Jade Helm, by doing multi-state and the military actively involved in this, sets a precedent that I don't think we're fully aware of yet. You have this going on. You have things like this shooting in Texas, drawings of Muhammad. ISIS is reporting that was one of their people. Others say that they highly doubt it. But the most important thing about that whole situation is what's going on with the media. Now, we all remember the Charlie Hebdo and the attack on Charlie Hebdo and for the Muhammad drawings. And what did we see from the media, even here in America, when that happened? It's about free speech. It's about free speech. It's about free speech. Yes. We have to, are you going to allow free speech, or are you going to allow people to silence you? And that I was surprised to hear it from definitely some of the left. But what happened during this Texas shooting? We seen the media come out and attacking free speech here in America. And the hypocrisy, I think, also is, again, playing into a political motive. And we have a lot of things converging all at one time. And it seems that, and we said this for years, that the system is ramping up. Well, I think that we have even something more than that. The system is dropping out. They are not going to be able to keep up the charade to the extent that they have here in the recent past. And that something big is going to happen. And I think they really do think civil unrest will happen. We're going to see civil unrest due to provocateurs, people that are starting this, people that, for political motives or personal, whether it be, actual people in political positions or groups that are working for personal motives along with the political. Trying to use this to create the civil unrest. And I think they really would like it to happen while Obama's still in office. I think Obama and the people that he's appointed and surrounded himself by, I think shows how much of a true extremist he really is. I think he really is a deep down extremist to the point that he believes in the socialist communist dream. And I even think he is brainwashed to the point to think capitalism is bad, not knowing what the difference between capitalism and corporatism is. And it doesn't help that we have corporatists calling themselves capitalists. And we also have this little hypocrisy with this whole thing, because then he'll work with the corporations that agree with him. Oh, hold on. I thought you didn't like the capitalists. Well, they're not capitalists, they're corporatists. And now to be a corporatist, it seems you have to go with the system. And it all kind of reminds me of Atlas Shrugged, where all these other companies fold to this political pressure to give and give and give and never take back, and wonder why their businesses fell, and the people that are smart, disappear. They opt out of the system. And I think there's something that has to happen to our economy here in the near future, because it really, I don't think it can keep this charade up. Okay. And I just seen this today. This from Next News Network. It's real short. Breaking news: NATO deploys Jade Helm level drills.
The world is teetering on the edge of the breaking point.
Target on the objective! Engage!
If you're concerned about Jade Helm 15, then you'll need to take note of what's happening in Europe right now. NATO has launched its own drills to rival the size and scope of Jade Helm, 3 drills in total activating thousands of servicemen. Estonia is the staging ground for Hedgehog 2015, where 13,000 soldiers and reservists and forces from the US, UK, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, Belgium, Poland, and the Netherlands will test their coordination. U.S. forces previously deployed for Operation Atlantic Resolve are supplying 4 Abrams battle tanks. The drill also includes German air defense units alongside the British and Belgian Air Force with NATO warplanes. The Lithuanian Army launched Operation Lightning Strike with over 3,000 troops focused on hybrid threats that require military and non-military response. Army Commander Major General Zukas said, quote, "The exercises will simulate situations when the Interior Ministry's forces and resources are insufficient to neutralize various extreme situations." In Norway, Dynamic Mongoose is underway with 10 NATO countries with about 5,000 servicemen. This drill involves simulated submarine hunts in coordination with surface vessels with radar and sonar. Given the rising tensions in the Middle East and Ukraine, a clear message is being sent to Russia. So not to be outdone, Russia and China have launched their own war games in the Mediterranean Sea. It's codenamed Joint Sea 2015I. It's important to note that this is the first in world history for China to conduct naval exercises in the Mediterranean. 6 Russian and 3 Chinese warships will all take part in live-fire exercises. China and Russia have conducted drills in the Yellow and East China Sea, but never before together in the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, American special forces are preparing their own expansive and controversial military drill, the largest of its kind in American history. It's called Jade Helm 15. The rush to ready the troops and navies of the world should be of great concern to all Americans and people of the world. Those who would lead us to war are preparing to do just that. So the question is no longer if World War III will happen, but what will be the spark to ignite it? Let those who have ears to hear know what the future holds, and please share this report with them. For the Next News Network, I'm Gary Franchi.
So, again, that's titled Breaking NATO Clones Jade Helm Drills. Next News Network on YouTube. I don't know what the NATO drills are about. The Russians and the Chinese have been working feverishly together. I know to get the oil off the petrodollar, which is the U.S. dollar right now, and transfer it. But problem I have, with this whole EU thing is, I don't think EU's united the way they think it is. I think it's already broken apart so much that there's countries that have signed on to banking agreements here lately with Russia and China. Well, basically China, but then Russia's involved too. And I don't think we're going to see that united Europe at all, the way that we have in the past. And I really think that we're seeing so much here right now with the civil unrest. I think that that's almost a secondary worry. And, I could be totally wrong. I admit that. But I think we have to be prepared for both. And another thing when it comes to if we do end up in this World War III is, drafts. Are they going to start trying to draft people? And I'm still worried about the people here because, too, you can have the martial law type thing. You can have the going after especially libertarians and anti-war people. You can have all this in a World War III scenario. Definitely, if they're planning on it being on U.S. soil. And when you start combining that, you have civil unrest, division, and attacks on U.S. soil, NATO training, Russia training. This seems more like they plan on America being the battleground. And then you look at stuff that they passed where they call America the battleground. It's almost like they've orchestrated America being some type of battleground. And I think we are now starting to see that. And I think when you become the battleground, no one's safe. You have people that cling to the tyrants, thinking they will keep the outsiders out, while the tyrants are going after the people loyal to maybe freedom and people's rights. And at the same time, those people that were trying to save themselves and being protected by the tyrants that are harming the rest of the people, well, they'd be basically targets or um, tried, kind of like German soldiers. And then maybe the smart ones will be recruited. Almost seems like history is replaying itself, just in a different place, different time. And, well, we see that's how it always works. It wasn't, Rome fell, rebuilt, and then fell. It's this civilization, this culture evolved and fell. Then this culture evolved and then fell. And then this culture evolved and then fell. The Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, the Germanic tribes, the United Kingdom. Now we have America that has rose, and now we are falling. And can we not learn from history's mistakes? And I think we have in a lot of ways. Culturally, we interact a lot different than we did, 100 or 200 years ago. We do evolve, but we can't get past the most basic that some of the smaller cultures have done. You look at Native American tribes. Yes, we all have our problems. There's bad people out there, but government has never gotten rid of that. It's never stopped that. But we see in some smaller pockets where you had freedom. You could leave, you could go, you could help, you could do nothing, trade nothing, prosper or fail, and be a part of something and not have force put upon you. Now, there were others that did use force, and those tend to be more violent tribes too. But, we've seen the mistakes of the past, and we've seen the successes of the past, and I think that we allow those to fade away throughout time, to a point that our children's children don't understand the gravity of that type of thinking, philosophy that leads to mass murder, to world wars, to destabilization in your community and your geographic location. I think that's so important that we continue to teach these type of things, because that's the only way that we're ever going to break out of this fallacy, that we can elect a few people, or people are born into it, or whatnot, but basically make idols out of these people and give them authority over us. In a way, we're treating them as gods over your life. And even if you don't believe in God, if you believe in government, Larkin Rose has a book out, The Most Dangerous Religion, Government. And that's really what you're making it. To have so much trust in government that you will continually vote for a system that has gone awry, and that has proved over and over and over that it's not rigged for you. I think we are missing a big big chunk of the picture. Now, I did have this clip. It was pretty interesting. I gotta see if I can find it. Trying to remember who posted it. Seen it on Facebook, so. I'm hoping it was this one. Just give me a second. Trying to find a video and a big long list of them here. I'm not seeing it. Let me see if I can find it on YouTube. And I'm hoping I can find it. And I probably won't. Just because it was that good of a video. Well, it was talking about how your vote doesn't really matter, and it came off research that was done, and it basically showed that no matter what the public opinion was, whether it be things that the public liked or the things that the public disliked, you had a 30% chance, no matter what, that that law would be passed. And this was throughout the beginning of, America and to the present. And when you looked at corporations kept increasing throughout the years. And then there was also a line that was drawn that shows what you would expect out of a true free society, that throughout the years, this would be your how much public opinion will actually be reflected by the government. And it shows that, well, the corporate structure is along that line. Not quite as high, but it's doing pretty good. And, well, we are still at 30%. So that's what public opinion has been and seems to always be, 30%. While corporations are somewhere, I think, close to the 80s. So 80% of what corporations want will get passed. Our political system is bought off. Now, look at our society right now, we've lost something, and this goes across races, and this goes across cultures. And there's quirks in that where you have things like slavery. So it didn't go across races at the time. But for the most part, there's a lot of people that you're happy to interact with any race that comes along. You everything, is just a social interaction. You don't judge anybody, but by their actions, their responsibility. But we've lost that sense of respect and helping people and, interacting with people. If you look at a lot of different races and cultures within these races and cultures, within whether it be the white communities, black communities, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, there's a lot of self-division within races and then across races. And I thought we were supposed to be, progressing, and what we're seeing is division. And it amazes me that we can have so much of this division in a society that claims to be accepting. When someone disagrees with you, that shouldn't be fighting words. When someone doesn't like you because of your lifestyle, that shouldn't be fighting words. But they also should not have the ability to, abridge your rights, always abiding by, the rules that you're not harming another person or their property. That we can live our own personal lives. We don't have to agree with them, but we can't abridge the other person's right to live that life. And victimless crimes and, all this that the someone goes, I don't like that person doing that, therefore that should be illegal. And then we make up arbitrary numbers, like breathalyzer numbers or speed limits. And people go, we need laws, we can't have anarchy, but at the same time they'll go and break that speed limit. You're committing anarchy there. But I'm not hurting anyone and I'm not driving dangerously. Exactly. And you're not hurting anyone. I'm not trying to make you a criminal for doing that. But I am trying to show you the hypocrisy when you go, well, that person shouldn't be at home smoking, marijuana. At the same time, they're sitting at home drinking alcohol. Well, I don't do enough to get drunk. Well, maybe they're not doing enough to get impaired that they can't think straight. The same that you're not drinking enough to not think straight. Just enough to, have a sip, maybe a little glass of wine for dinner. But at the same time, you also see people that will go home and drink a 6-pack. Or sip on a bottle of Jack. Or, drink even more than a 6-pack. Or, they'll sit down and drink 12-pack, 24-pack with their buddy. And then talk crap about how someone else does. If you don't want people to abridge your rights, one, do what you do responsibly so that it doesn't hurt other people or their property. And two, don't try to, enforce your belief on how someone should live on someone else, because guess what? If they get the power, they're going to do the same to you. And then it's up to everybody else that's out there to go, no, you can't enforce that upon someone because they're not doing anything that's hurting someone. If they do something that hurts someone, let's say you have a head-on collision because you weren't paying attention, messing with your radio, and you cross that yellow line and head-on collision and you kill someone. Are you any more less responsible then than you are if you drank too much or you did some type of drug that made you impaired? You make a conscious decision to pay attention to what you're doing and what other people are doing. You kind of have that responsibility to yourself and your own safety, because people do make mistakes. And that's another thing. Is it a mistake or a conscious decision? And we have to really start judging on the victim crimes, the ones that have people that are injured or hurt, or their property is injured or hurt from this. But are we already lost? Has law enforcement gone too far? And that's a big question out there anymore. Okay, we're coming up to 7:20 now. Want to cover some prepping stuff. I have to pull up these articles. I had to close it all out there. That one video was freezing quite a bit. I think I did have another one here. If I can find it. Let me see if I can find it here. I'm not finding that one. I did have something from Truth in Media, which, if you don't know, Ben Swan is now, benswan.com is now Truth in Media. This was something that he's been working on for quite a while. So it's truthinmedia.com now. Now, if this will actually go through. Okay. I think it's going now. And this one's Julie Borowski. Here's the one question that I want to ask Hillary Clinton supporters. Well, I really just, I can't understand why anybody's a Hillary Clinton supporter that's not one of the elitists. I think you would have to be the most unknowledgeable person. And I guess we've seen quite a few of those from Mark Dice's videos and other people that have done videos where they go out in public and ask questions or, get people to sign something, a petition, not knowing what the hell they're signing. Or just agree as long as it's a Democrat with whatever the person's asking about. And it's really amazing. But I want to play this clip here. It's pretty quick, so here we go.
One question to Hillary Clinton supporters: would you still support her if she were a man? Let's pretend Hillary is now Harold. Would you be #ready for Harold? Would you be excited about his policies and his career achievements? If you say no, you're just supporting Hillary because of her gender, which is stupid. As a woman, this just drives me crazy because I don't think the presidency should be about filling a quota. Yes or no? Are you a woman? Yes? Well, congratulations! You just met my only qualification for being president of the United States. And if you're a woman who doesn't support Hillary, watch out. Wow, you have so much internal misogyny. It's women like you who refuse to vote for a woman president who are holding us back. It's not like her gender is the only thing holding me back from supporting her, and if she were just a man, then I would gladly support her. No! I don't care what gender she is. He, she, whatever. That person is awful and has awful policies. There are so many valid reasons not to support Hillary Clinton. It bothers me when I see anti-Hillary Clinton people focus on just dumb things. She's a man-eater. She's the B word. She's ugly. She's gross. Ew, I want to touch that. Well, would you touch Jeb Bush? She couldn't satisfy her husband. How could she satisfy the nation? 2008 called and they said that joke still isn't that good. Besides, we're talking about Bill Clinton here. Would any one woman be able to satisfy his appetite? Let's be real. What I am trying to say, but still keep it PG, is that he has issues. The problem with Hillary Clinton has nothing to do with her goofy husband cheating on her, but rather her policies. Even from a more liberal standpoint. Take, for example, foreign policy. She voted for the Iraq War. She's more hawkish, actually, than a lot of Republicans. On civil liberties, she's not good at all. She's defended NSA spying a bunch of times, even when many Republicans have spoken out against it. She's butt buddies with Wall Street. You can guarantee she's going to bail out the big banks for their own mistakes, not to mention all those scandals she's had. It's not that I'm opposed to a woman being president, it's that I'm opposed to crappy presidents. I can't hear anything I disagree with. Safe spaces. I need my safe space.
And you can find that video at truthandmedia.com. Ben Swan's new launch, the Truth in Media project he's been working on. And, the arguments made never really address any of the issues. And we even see it with people like Rand Paul. But this is how they're taught. When you ask them a question, why would you support this? Well, see, the question is, where's the balance? Okay, basically, you're not going to answer my question. And I think it would be better if they just came out and said what they believe. But remember, this is a contest. But that's also what makes it impossible to know who the hell you're voting for, because we've seen that they can lie through political careers to get what they want, get the support they want. Our biggest threat, I think, when it comes to election is getting any of the party, Republican or Democrat, into office. I also think that there's a lot of threat from the Libertarian and the Green Party, because, again, they're parties. And I think that you're going to have a group of them that are going to be behind the scenes shaping their party the way they believe. And it's like the GOP. And we're going to also have an issue reforming government, because you would have to get the majority of the House, the majority of the Senate, the majority for the White House, and all the appointees that go along with it, to be able to change anything at the federal level in that way. And, again, what I've said is local. Well, we know if you live in a city, you can't really vote for your law enforcement. Your mayor, well, they're kind of all corrupt. The best thing you can do, I think, my personal opinion, is get outside the city and vote for the council, the county council, and the sheriff. And the one way I've seen this more successful is in places that don't have a lot of the outer city bought up by wealthy people, where you still have a pretty good balance of middle class, poor, rich, and ones that also get along with each other. And sometimes they are more conservative. But because they're rural areas, they're also a lot of, mind your own business. Now, if you're out in public acting a fool, they might, call you out for acting a fool, but don't hurt anyone and mind your own damn business is basic rules. And they get along just right, because you don't have the amount of violence. When you do have the amount of violence, it's usually that, very small percentage of someone that's heavily abusing drugs or alcohol. And we see that doesn't get reduced in larger cities with very aggressive and large law enforcement. What do we end up seeing? A lot of innocent people stopped and frisked, pulled out of their cars, illegally detained, like, the secret detention in Chicago. We see them with military gear, a lot of military gear, because they have a lot of law enforcement. And they can basically run around like paramilitary. We see innocent people, people that aren't harming others, attacked, searched without warrants, bogus charges made up, and they happen a lot too in the poverty areas. These people are basically stuck. They got a lot of these people definitely back in '08 got swindled into house loans. Oh, that $50,000 home by then was it's worth 85,000. So they go out and take out these loans. Now their house is worth, 50, 45. They can't even afford to, escape the city in ways. And it's poverty, not race. It's really good class warfare. And this is something that's not new to America. Class warfare has gone on for quite a while. And it's always done through government. And it can go back to things like the split up of Rockefeller's Standard Oil. When you look at, Standard Oil is too big and it's a monopoly and Rockefeller owns it and we got to go after these people. But what came out of it, they divided Standard Oil up, and Rockefeller had majority shares in most of those, if not all of them. And basically, it was just a smoke and mirrors game. But what did that also do? It prevented others from using his tactics to become as big as he is. Corporations and the elites have always used governments to secure their status. And we see that now where they're middle class, there's not really a middle class anymore. The people that are doing the middle class jobs, what ones are left, there's some out there that, are still paying the okay wage at a factory. But a lot of the middle class jobs, the price of that has completely dropped off. These jobs that were considered middle class, now people are making, starting off at a whole $8 or $9 an hour. In a year you'll be making 10 or 11. And a lot of people are grateful that they are at least able to make that. They're not making minimum wage. And you're looking at people that are working there since the depression or recession, whatever you want to call it. I don't even think it's really ever stopped. It's kind of stagnated, but can't rely on the stock market. But people that have been working since the recession are a lot of times just starting to make that baseline, middle class wage. Just starting to hit that. Those people are supervisors, leaders, foremen, managers. When you see people that run their butts off, got a lot of, responsibility on their shoulders, and you see those people struggle to buy a $80,000 home, they're way too afraid to even touch a $125,000 loan, because what if something happens? Even with what, wage increases I might see, I still don't know if I'll be safe taking that, because I'll just lose it if the bubble pops. And I think more people are aware that, they see the stock market doing things, but they don't see it in reality. The stock market is not showing reality. And, there is one clip that I probably could find pretty quick, and it was not too long. And see if we got enough time. And he was going after Walmart, and I found it, welfare for Walmart. And this was from Barry Sanders on YouTube. But I really think that there's something about what they bring up in this. When General Motors was at the top of their game, and one of the biggest corporations in America, in today's dollars, the average worker there made around like $37 or $38 an hour, compared to the biggest corporation in America now, which is Walmart. So welfare for Walmart, here we go.
One of the interesting aspects of discussions about the economy or income inequality inside the Beltway, as opposed to back home in the real world, is the very different tone that we hear. The idea that anybody could suggest that we are not seeing massive increases in income and wealth inequality is beyond my comprehension. If you go outside of the Beltway, there is no debate about that. The idea that anyone could suggest that today the economy for the middle class is anywhere near where it used to be is beyond comprehension, I think, to the vast majority of the American people. The reality that we're seeing today is that the middle class in this country is disappearing. Median family income is going down. We have more people living in poverty today than any time in the history of the United States of America. And as Secretary Reich pointed out, between 2009 and 2012, 95% of all new income generated in this country went to the top 1%. And in terms of wealth, the situation is even worse. Maybe some of the panelists might want to defend the situation where the top 1% in America owns more wealth than the bottom, that the top 1% owns 38% of the wealth in this country, and the bottom 60% owns 2.3% of the wealth. Does anybody on that panel, and I will ask that question in a moment, think that that makes moral sense or economic sense? Does anybody think it makes moral or economic sense that one family, the Walton family, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people? Now, in terms of government action, we have heard that the stimulus package presumably had no impact. Well, that wasn't true in my state, nor was it true in America. By investing in our economy, in our kids, in infrastructure, according to the CBO, the Recovery Act, the stimulus bill, created or sustained up to 3.6 million jobs, a 4.2% boost for GDP in the first quarter of 2010, and a reduction in the unemployment rate of up to 2.1% in the last quarter of 2009, at a time we needed the jobs the most. Last point that I want to make, and I want to ask a question on this one. The Walton family is the wealthiest family in America. Does anybody on the panel think that they need significant welfare help? And yet it turns out that they are the largest recipient of welfare in America. Because when you pay workers starvation wages, which is what Walmart does, how do the workers at Walmart or McDonald's or Burger King survive? Well, they get Medicaid for their kids and for themselves. They get food stamps. They live in government-sponsored affordable housing. So I start off with my question to Dr. Winship, and we'll go down the line. Do you think the Walton family, worth $100 billion, is in need of welfare from the middle class of this country? Or do you think maybe we should raise the minimum wage so that those workers can earn a living wage and not have to get Medicaid or food stamps? Dr. Winship?
Thank you, Senator. So let me start with your earlier question about defending the wealth distribution that we have. So
well, actually, my question was on the Walton family. Do you think they need welfare?
So I would not use the word welfare. I think it's stigmatizing.
You think their workers in large numbers should have to get Medicaid or food stamps?
What I think is that Walmart has the low prices, which...
Please answer my question.
So I'm sorry, repeat the question for me.
The question is, do you think the wealthiest family in this country, the Walton family, should have employees, large numbers of employees, who depend upon government help, Medicaid, food stamps, affordable housing, in order to get by? Or should they pay their workers a living wage? And should we raise the minimum wage to make sure that they do that?
I think that we should not raise the wage above levels that's going to cause Walmart to not hire their workers. The only way that they're able to have the prices which benefit low-income people more than people up on the income distribution is by paying wages that are not as high as you or I might like.
So I'm hearing your question to be that the middle class of this country, through increased taxes, should be subsidizing the wealthiest family in this country who are paying inadequate wages. Secretary Reich, what's your take on
that? Senator, I do not think that taxpayers in this country ought to be subsidizing the wealthiest family in this country, or any company and any corporation that is paying its workers so little that those workers, in order to have a decent living, have got to rely on food stamps, Medicaid, subsidized housing, and so on. That is corporate welfare of the worst kind. But more broadly, let me simply say that Walmart is the largest employer in the United States. It is paying its workers, if you include its part-time workers, on average $8.80 an hour. Now compare that to 1955, when the largest employer in the United States was General Motors, and it was paying its workers, in today's dollars, $37 an hour.
That's a huge point. I don't have much time.
No,
Dr. Kinney and Dr. Mather, if they could answer the question, should the taxpayers of this country be subsidizing
30 seconds each.
Well, 30 seconds is fine.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should be subsidizing Walmart, but I think workers have a choice about where they want to work. If they're choosing to work at Walmart, that is their choice, and we should not decide for them whether it's a good choice. The program subsidizes workers. These are poverty programs that benefits go directly to workers. So if we think that they're creating jobs and people are able to work and earn enough benefits to survive, I think it's a good thing.
Dr. Kearney?
When Walmart came to Washington, D.C., the number of job applicants per job, there were more than dozens of people willing to take each job. I think Walmart is a brilliant innovation, and I have no beef with the Walton family. It would be great if people could move up the wage distribution faster at Walmart and aspire to management positions and better positions for themselves and their children.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. Campbell.
And what this is corporatism. This is not capitalism. This is strictly corporatism. And you know, we have corporatists constantly calling themselves capitalists, and they're not. And the thing is the wages for a lot of Americans, definitely at these big corporations, have been pretty stagnant. They haven't gone up with the inflation rates. At the same time, these companies had made record profits. And the way they've been able to successfully do this, all the big corporations have been able to successfully do this, is through regulation, copyright, and all this. There are copyrights out there of things that are not created for the simple reason of I don't know if they're copyright or what they're considered, but patents. The government holds patents for things that they don't allow out. You know, I know there's Tesla patents that are reported not to have been released that I think it was the government holds. The government has had a patent on marijuana for medical uses, but at the same time claim that there weren't any. Corporatists have used regulation to the extent that how easy is it for you to compete with companies? I'm sure when Walmart does something that might break a regulation, they can afford to pay a fine. What about you? When any of these big corporations have to pay fines, and maybe even the hundreds of thousands with their record-breaking millions of dollars, is that a big deal to them? What about you, a person that's starting out from the bottom? Then you look at a lot of the connections of who helped write these. Oh, lobbyists that were paid by corporations that can afford to pay the fine. And then, you know, you look at stuff like this and, you know, place I work for, not the best wages at all. I'll admit that. I don't blame on them. They're a very small company and they're competing with foreign countries too. And the thing is, though, they make sure that they offer as much benefits as possible. They probably have one of the better benefit packages of a lot of other places. They're small though. They're family owned, so they do understand to a point. And from what they built, I can't blame them on making a really good living because of, you know, this was built by the family from starting off in a garage. Walmart, though, there's a large amount of Walmart employees that have to have food stamps, welfare, and all that. And that's the richest family. They don't make enough money that they can afford to pay their employees and give their employees the benefits that they need. And yes, you have a choice. And I think that you have to, as the last one said, aspire to something better. And if that means leaving a company because you can't move further up, then do it. And we have to start finding our own paths. And a lot more people are capable than they allow themselves to believe. And, I even deal with this with my own family, trying to get them to do something that's maybe uncomfortable, but will allow them to live happier and provide for themselves without relying on someone else. And it's something that we all have to try to aspire to be able to say we'll either learn or we have what it takes to do this. And remember, even if you believe you have what it takes, always be willing to learn more from people that have done it and made those mistakes. That's usually easy to find. We have the internet. We do have pretty good access. And, that's the last thing I need to cover. You see InfoWars right now battling with Alexa, so is Drudge Report. And I went on there and I checked it out, and it's a legitimate argument because since October it shows a sharp decline, and then you go to some of the real far left mainstream media outlets, and theirs are shooting up since October. And these sites show that they're getting the traffic, but Alexa isn't. I guess from what I heard, Alex Jones was even not on air or called in for a short time and wasn't on air because he was talking to lawyers about all this, and then Facebook censoring over a picture of a ISIS soldier with a Stalin quote for an article. It wasn't something that was like blatantly bad. It had ISIS soldier and a Stalin quote. We're going to continue to see people attacking us and trying to stop alternative media from spreading the truth. And the truth is people are being manipulated. It's time that more and more people wake up, and you have to spread things like UCY.tv. Remember, go UCY.tv and click the UCY store tab and check it out. It's Amazon. UCY has partnered with Amazon to bring you the same great deals. At the same time, UCY gets a small kickback to help cover operating costs. UCY store on Amazon has a great listing of all kinds of prepping and camping gear, so go check them out. And also, if you're looking for non-GMO or seed vaults to store, you could do a full acre crisis garden from My Patriot Supply. Go to antityrannynews.com/MyPatriot, and it will take you right straight to My Patriot Supply, and that helps us cover our operating costs on this end. And, spread UCY.tv. Always great discussions, great viewpoints, interviews. And coming up next is the continual condition here on UCY.tv. And I know Anti-Media is later on tonight, so stick in for Nick Burnaby. One thing that they really want to do is stop alternative media. And it's really up to you to show your support, spread the information. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll catch you this Friday.